Are we on?
Are we going? Looks like we're going. We're live. Welcome, everyone. So shall we tell them we just had a little bit of a mishap
everybody.
here?
Yes. You know, when you have something really important going on like this, and at the very last second, all of a sudden you can't get into a critical program that you need, and it decides
Skype for her.
Skype, which is, of course, how I communicate with Lori and Michael, and they pass along your questions to us. So it's a critical part of the operation. So tonight of all nights, right before the show, I always reset my computer with enough time. Just a little thing I do. And Skype will not let me in. I did codes from my phone, codes from email, reset it.
I'm like, just roll with it. Just roll with it.
And it
no Skype tonight. You don't need it.
It's just not letting me in tonight. So it is absolutely out. My apologies, because it's very difficult for me to do this
Yeah,
without
but
it.
we're doing this together tonight. You're not leaving the camera, so everyone's going to be happy. They're going to be like,
Well, yeah,
"Yay,
there's no point."
Keep Tracy.
So-
This is how we planned it anyway.
Yeah, we were talking about doing this,
So-
but still, Skype. I need my Lori and Michael.
Well, so we won't be able to really field questions, but it's fine. You know why? Because this is going to be great. We're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
We have a lot to show. And we've been working on our audio and video presentation.
As you know.
It's a constant tweak, and I'm not going to pretend that we've nailed it, but I think we're getting a little bit closer each week. Hopefully this is a little bit closer now. So we've got our little, our microphone. We're working on better systems. And I think we're looking around at like getting a nice big microphone come down like this, like the fancy people do. And we'll just see how it goes.
We're going to fancy
making
it up a bit.
So anyway, we're happy to be here with you. And the big news of the UFO field the last couple of weeks, I would say, is this UFO video shot in Beaver, Utah. And it's been a very, very big major subject of topic among a lot of folks in the field. For the last couple of weeks, people have been asking what my opinion is on it, as if I have any qualified opinion to give. I mean, I'm just an interested UFO person like anyone else. I'm not a photo expert. I'm not a physicist. I don't do the calculations, but people wanted to know anyway. So what do? I hunt around and I find out what other smart people think. And I look at the video the best I can and come to the best conclusions, provisional conclusions that I can. I think we can agree it's a very interesting video, like without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And Tracy has been looking into it today. I've been looking into it today. We both got a lot of things we want to say about it.
Yeah, I was looking into some other drone stuff this morning before we were even talking about doing this.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about drones too. So a couple of things. I want to bring some history into this as well. So I think one thing we can start. Did you want to just say anything else before we jumped in?
Let's just jump right in.
I'm going to share the screen, which we're able to do these days. And I'm going to show you. You can see how this goes. You got an application window. And here is, oh, I don't even have it set to the right. Hold on. I'm going to just give me 1 second here, guys. We'll go to the beginning. Okay, now I'm going to share a screen. And as long as the Google Chrome wants to behave, here we go. So I'm going to share this screen. All right, so this, I'm going to show about a 30-second worth of the clip of the object itself. This is just one screenshot. You know, you've seen this. This is from Beaver, Utah from October 2016. And here's the next. You can see this object zipping along. And what is it? Now, there's an argument that it's a bird, a falcon. Look very carefully at that. Maybe that's what it is, or an insect of some sort. You know, I've been trying. Now, just before we went on, we got a Skype reply from our friend Mark D'Antonio, who's a very accomplished analyst of these types of things. And his opinion is that it's a falcon of some sort, a hawk coming in, attacking the drone in a kind of territorial manner. And he had some, you know, very reasonable perspective on it. There's other folks over at the website Metabunk. I was down there today. There's very smart people indeed, and their explanations range from it's got to be CGI to a bird. Falcon, I think, seems to be the leading candidate. And I think there were some folks who said that it was probably a bug. Over there, you really never get a genuine UFO answer to pretty much anything that I've ever seen. It's classic. It can't be, therefore it isn't. So they look very, very hard in other directions that are prosaic. But of course, that's a good thing too. You really want to explore all the prosaic explanations. So here's just a three frame. Again, you can see it on this trajectory. And this is the location where it is. Beaver, Utah is a little under 200 miles, direct flight from Area 51. People have been making a big thing out of that. By my calculation on Google Earth, it's roughly 190 miles. Be a little longer to drive. So now I'm going to show the video. And all I did, this is nothing fancy here, is, let me see the screen share, is, you know, there's a lot of video analysis that's out there on the web. And I would, oh, hold on, let me just, let's get this set up here. And this is footage captured by two gentlemen named Sam Chortek and Jimmy Chappie. So let's do a little screen share. And I'm going to show you, and I've slowed this video down myself. So they slowed it down. I slowed it down by about 50% as well. And it's only going to take about 1 minute. There's a great deal more. I certainly encourage you to check out their sites. Let me just start the play here, and you will see this is all slowed down. There's the object, zooms by. You're going to see it again. They do a replay very nicely here. Here it comes, zooming by. This is slowed down from slowed down, and they're going to slow it down even further. You see the bend comes in. Some people say it's has the flight path of a hawk. It does swoop. Observe. I have a hard time seeing falcon or hawk here, but I don't want to just believe for the sake of believing either. Right. Here it comes. This is the last, very slow. And there it goes.
So Mark argues that he sees wings that he feels are very obvious there. And I hadn't sort of looked at it. I mean, we just heard this right before we went on. So right. I would have liked to examine it again after hearing what he'd said. But I just saw, looking at the end there, I think the part that he's talking about. But still, you kind of can't get past how far it looks like it's flying and how fast.
One guy writes, if you see a bird, you need drug rehab. Okay, that's kind of funny.
It's a little tough to see it as a bird for myself. However.
Well, you were listening to interviews of the guy who was in charge of, who was running the drone, and his, I mean, not that his argument is the final word, but his thing was he's shot a lot of birds,
Jimmy Chappie.
He shot a lot of birds, and he shot bugs and things. And you said that he said this was different.
Yeah, so he is, I'm sure a lot of you know, professional drone operator for 6 years. He's not a CG guy. And so he takes this kind of footage all the time. So he's seen all sorts of things come across. So he's seen bugs, he's seen birds, he's seen, all sorts of nature. And one thing that really stands out to him was that usually they're all backlit. So they're dark, as opposed to this object, which is ultra bright.
Yes,
silver bordering on white. Right. So for him, that's one problem he has with the bug bird theory. So I find that interesting.
The other thing was now, our friend Mark D'Antonio hypothesized a really, what I thought was actually a rather slow speed of the bird. He just wrote to me maybe 25 miles per hour. A falcon can descend and come in at like 100 miles per hour or even faster.
Right.
25, but he said if the drone's moving at 25, which I think it was.
Which, yes, it was.
So then you have a closing speed. It's basically 50 miles per hour. And so the question is, could that be a bird moving at that relative speed? It seems a bit too slow to my untrained eye, admittedly, but that thing seemed way too fast.
I mean, when you see the footage played the first time, it's, obviously it's faster than you can even register. And when they slow it down just a little bit, it still seems so much faster than a bird. But again, this is just how it seems just looking at the video, and we don't have a trained eye for this. But
I would point something out though. One of the things I'm going to show the folks here is that there is a history of what I would say are very credible instrumentation and measurements of objects doing multiple thousands of miles per hour that are not supposed to be possible. And part of the problem that people have, I suspect, is that if they assume that's not possible, then they're going to rule it out to begin with. But what if it is possible?
Right.
Like, what if it is in a variation of our physics using different types of material science for the object? There's a very, very interesting interview that we listened to a few weeks ago with Jack Sarfati, physicist, who talked quite a lot about this and how it actually is possible. So if you assume that there have been reliable reports of objects moving at several thousand miles per hour, then you might think, all right, is this one possible? On the other hand, if you are only looking UFO, would you be inclined to miss the bird? That's the other part of it, or even an insect, if that's possible. And that's what Mark's position is, and that's what the folks, I think, at Metabunk would argue as well, at least some of them. So I don't know. Like, this is why I like to be very cautious, despite the title of this video, which is, okay, I admit, I call it The Extraordinary UFO. But I personally like to just wait a little bit and let the chips fall.
Yeah, let's see.
Let people discuss this.
Yeah, I think it's really important
threat analysis
that it goes out there. I mean, they say they released the raw footage that that's out there.
Lots of metadata on that footage and that video as well.
So, we're going to have to give this time and see what happens. But if it is, let's remove the bird theory for a moment. Yeah, if it's a military object, then clearly
that's interesting.
There is something that we don't know about out there that is going double the speed of anything else recorded from the military, right?
If it all depends on the accuracy of the so-called parallax measurements and all this stuff. So, I mean, I watched that just like you did, and I thought, oh, well, that's actually not a bad analysis. The question is it a good analysis or not? So we're not qualified to say. If it's a good analysis, then that thing was estimated at traveling at roughly 10,000 plus miles per hour. All right, so moving at like roughly 3 miles in a second, based on the distance to the mountains and so forth. But again, there's another side to it, and it's just worth considering that there's another side to it. And the fact is, I don't know. But I'd like to share the screen here with these viewers and show that there is a history of this sort of a thing. This is a memo that I've actually talked about this a couple of times recently on these shows. And this is a memo to the director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, dated January 31st, 1949. And this is page 2 of a fairly long memo. This is the same memo that described the topic of flying saucers as top secret by the Army and the Air Force. And so this document says, recent observations have indicated that the unidentified phenomena travel at a rate of speed estimated at a minimum of 3 miles per second. Sound familiar? And a maximum of 12 miles per second. This is 1949, or a mean calculated speed of 7.5 miles a second, or 27,000 miles per hour. Now, that doesn't make it true just because the FBI says it to Hoover, but the fact is these numbers weren't just being pulled out of the air. They were obtaining measurements of objects in the upper atmosphere, typically using instruments such as theodolites, which are specific measuring instruments for this type of a thing. This is another memo. This is from 1953. I've always found this one fascinating. UFO sighting, not done with instrumentation. This is over by the Oak Ridge nuclear facility in Tennessee, a very important place. And an employee, an engineer who worked at Oak Ridge, witnessed this, reported it. This then ended up in a report from the commanding general of the Third Army at Fort McPherson, Georgia, to Washington. And I'm just going to read this statement here. Object was extremely black in color, having an appearance of a deep black metal exterior with a fine gloss. It did not leave a vapor trail. No sound was heard. The object flew east at a tremendous speed for what appeared to be 3 miles, where it stopped. The object was then joined by 2 more of these same objects. A formation similar to a spread V was formed, and the objects at a tremendous speed flew in an eastward direction. I've always found that just to be fascinating. So there's no speed calculation here, but they use the word tremendous twice in this paragraph. So I think it went pretty darn fast indeed. Now, there's a couple of sightings I want to just mention to you that took place in 1948 at White Sands Proving Ground in the southern part of New Mexico. Now, in fact, I'm sure that this was one of the sightings that probably figured its way into the calculations of the folks over at the FBI. The first one, we don't know quite as much about it, was on April 5th, 1948. White Sands is a place where a lot of missiles were tested, a lot of weather balloons, a lot of this Navy skyhook balloon back then was being tested. So on April 5th, you had a team of Navy missile trackers and a scientist, and they're tracking a UFO for several minutes with a theodolite, doing all kinds of maneuvers that were deemed to be impossible. It was seen as a disc or oval shaped object. On the 24th of April, 1948, we have I think a much more solid and or at least a well measured case is really what I want to say. The commander of the team was Commander R.B. McLaughlin. He had a team of scientists, engineers, technicians, and they're just about to do a launch of the massive skyhook balloon that the Navy was employing back in those days. Before they did the skyhook, they launched another balloon, basically to test the winds and so forth. Very typical. As they're watching this balloon through a theodolite, one of the engineers or technicians notices this other object, and they start tracking this. And it was an incredibly fast UFO. They said they had no problem seeing this. It was elliptical in shape. It was white or very bright color. And they're tracking it, moving at 5 miles per second. That's 18,000 miles per hour. McLaughlin, this is him, by the way. He was written about in True magazine just a couple of years later. It was a very, very big thing. He stated that the object then, after they tracked it for a while, it veered sharply upward and was just gone. And this is him, and he states for True magazine, I'm convinced that it was a flying saucer, and further, that these discs are spaceships from another planet operated by animate, intelligent beings. So, pretty interesting, a pretty amazing speed indeed. And is it possible that they were wrong? Well, I don't think that they were wrong, because the thing is that these types of instrumentation that the Navy and other scientists at White Sands were using all through the late 40s and early 50s were very reliable. That's why they used them. So they received a number of sightings, tracked a number of sightings of objects moving at this speed. And I'm just going to share one more sighting with you. I don't have any images of this one. This took place in Canada in Goose Bay, Labrador. And I don't have an exact date for it. No one does. But it happened in the summer of 1948. Now, at Goose Bay at that time, you had a joint U.S.-Canadian air base being operated. And the sighting was not known throughout all of the 1950s, but it was reported to NICAP in 1961 by an Air Force, retired at that point, Air Force major named Edwin Jerome. He was a former command pilot and an air provost marshal for, I believe, 7 or 8 years. So a very responsible guy. And he described his experience at Goose Bay in 1948, that summer. He said there was an inspection team, stateside generals, quite a few of them were at the base, basically visiting the base radar facilities to examine them. At that time, and this was no visual, so I just want to point that out, it was a straight up radar tracking. by the radar operators who picked up a target traveling at a speed of 9,000 miles per hour. And this is what Jerome said to the folks at NICAP. Obviously, this was no time for levity or miscalculations in the presence of an inspecting party. The poor airman was brought to task for his apparent miscalculations. Again, the target appeared, and this time the inspectors were actually shown the apparition on the radar screen. So the generals saw it. They concluded at the time that it was a radar miscalculation. Instruments were screwed up. Problem was they saw a UFO the very next day, this time hovering at a ridiculously high altitude directly over the base. So was it a radar malfunction? Well, your guess is as good as mine, but my point is that these types of ridiculously fast speeds are not unique to what would be the Utah UFO, if that's legit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just, last year everyone was talking about the Tic Tac UFO.
Yeah.
And, we've both been immersed in that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
That object zipped away from Commander Fravor at a speed that he estimated 2 seconds, 10 miles in 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, 5 miles
Mm-hmm.
a second, that's 20 or 18,000 miles an hour.
That's right. So what we're saying there, obviously, is that it's not potentially, if we believe that footage, it's not impossible.
No, exactly. It's not impossible.
And it's not just the footage
That's
in
the
this
thing.
case. We also have the testimony of pilots.
Of the
Fravor.
Navy pilot, yes.
Yeah.
And actually, and there's not a lot yet publicized about it, but Fravor was not the only pilot during this encounter. There were 2 planes, 2 pilots in each aircraft. There's 4 people altogether that were in the air, and my understanding is that they are being interviewed. So hopefully that information will come out. And the fact is, Fravor is not the first.
Right.
There's been pilots for decades and decades beyond that who've talked about unbelievable speed. You and I, when we were in Australia, we had a friend of ours.
Oh, yeah.
I think we can just say a couple of little things about him. He's a former British intelligence.
MI6.
Yes. And a very soft-spoken, very nice gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
You can believe these stories or not, but we liked him and we got to know him pretty well. And we were, I think we have no reason to think that he was pulling our leg. Anyway, he was on a private jet going across the Atlantic from from UK to Canada, and they had just passed Ireland, I think. And this friend of ours was a co-pilot. The pilot said, got to hit the loo. So he leaves. So our friend is, and this is a private jet, moving at a nice clip across the Atlantic. And he had, do you remember some of this? It was a radar?
I can't remember the full sighting details. We were talking about this before, and I wish we actually have this recorded so we can get the exact information.
Well,
but the most important thing, if we can't recall,
radar tracking. He started with the radar tracking of something moving ridiculously fast.
He saw it out the window.
And he watched it zoom by. And how did he describe the shape?
I can't remember. Honestly,
it was disc or spherical shaped.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember. So
yeah. And he just watched it. And he's thinking, we're flying at a pretty good clip. That doesn't look like any aircraft we've ever seen ever. And it's moving at a speed. I don't think he really gave an estimate, but let's just say very fast. Yeah. Much faster than what they were doing in their jet.
I remember the reaction. Is that what you're going to
continue
with? Yeah.
You tell this part.
So the pilot comes back in. I think he's a little bit apprehensive to tell the pilot. He does. And the pilot's like, oh, yeah, one of those again?
Yeah,
This is common, everyday thing for him. So I almost just said his name. So
yeah, we won't do that.
We won't do that.
But and that story is just a drop in the bucket.
That's right. I was going to say there's lots of testimony like this out there.
So yeah, and I don't know if I have any more. Oh yeah, right. I want to show a couple more slides here. Can I do this?
Of course.
We'll get into this.
Of course.
So just to get into speeds that we're doing today in our technology, Tracy and I were both looking into different types of, like, what's the fastest drone and what's the fastest aircraft and what are our capabilities. So I didn't realize this, but for a standard kind of racing drone. The fastest, this is for a quadcopter, so with the 4 propellers. In 2017, a drone known as the DRL Racer X won the Guinness Book of World Record for fastest ground speed by a battery-powered remote-controlled quadcopter, 163.5 miles per hour. There's a picture of it. Now, I mean, we can assume that this thing wasn't any such thing as a quadcopter. It didn't have any look. Didn't look like that at all. Now we're getting into thousands of miles per hour. So I was trying to find out what's the actual fastest hypersonic aircraft that we have. And so here's one, the SR-72, not the SR-71 Blackbird, but the SR-72 hypersonic spy drone moving. This did fly. It does not fly currently, I don't believe, but clocks in at about 4,500 miles per hour, which is something like Mach 6 or 7, I believe. There's an article about that an article about that craft in Popular Mechanics. This is from a couple of years ago, not that long ago, I think 2014. You got the NASA X-43 is another one. This is possibly the fastest or one of the fastest aircraft that have ever been made. I can't imagine anything that's gone faster. Mach 9.2, 2 miles per second, 7,000 miles per hour. Now, what's really funny is that this ridiculously fast craft, which of course can only do its speed at ultra high altitude because the air is much less dense there. So you have to go up to 100,000 feet, roughly 18 plus miles up there. You've got UFOs back in the 40s being tracked apparently faster than this. And to a hardened skeptic, which I can understand, like they would just think, well, those reports have to be absurd. There's no genuine validity to them. But I don't agree with this. I think that they're not seeing it the right way. I think what they have to look at is a different form of physics, and not magic make-believe physics, but actual genuine physics. This is the fastest rocket sled on the ground. I just thought I'd put it in there for fun, and it hit a ground speed of Mach 8.5 over 6,000 miles per hour. Good grief. How does this thing work? Well, it's a 4-stage rocket, and it moves pretty freaking fast. So that's the rocket sled. And here's back again to our famous, wonderful Utah Utah object, whether it's a hawk or some kind of elliptical UFO.
Can we watch the video again?
Yeah. I mean, we can. Let's go back. We'll do this one more time. Tracy says yes, so that's what happens. All right, so let's just set this thing up here. I'm going to share the screen. And this is, of course, again, I just took this from the initial 4-minute video that's out there on YouTube. It's got like 1 million views.
It was posted by Brian Hanley. I think that's right.
You probably know this better than I do this point. But anyway, I just took a 30-second clip from that and I've slowed it down. So here we go, and I'm going to play it, and you can watch it again. So there's Sam Chardick, Jimmy. Okay, here we go. Utah UFO. Zoom. This is really slowed down. Here we come. You can see it turning, coming up. Now let's look at this one really carefully and see if we can detect wings. And the final one, it's slowed down. This is as close to a frame by frame as we're going to get here.
Right. So Mark is saying that this bird would be flying at, or we would be perceiving it at 50 miles an hour because the drone is
The
going.
relative speed would be 50.
Right. The drone is going at 25 max,
Right.
which, by the way, he also, Jimmy Chappie, also talked about there being headwinds that day.
Okay.
Which would slow the drone for the drone. So it would slow the drone down. He remembers it being
Slow his drone down.
Slow his drone down. Yeah. 15 to 20 miles per hour.
So this other object could have been going a little faster, boosted by winds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's right. So.
All right. Well, there you go.
And I'm going to just admit, I had not really looked at it through that lens of, you know, I'd heard what you'd said that, was it Metabunk?
Yeah.
Had said about it being a falcon, which I thought was absolutely impossible. Honestly, just my reaction when I watched it, I thought, okay, this has got to be military for sure, or some unidentified object from somewhere else. Now, again, we just heard Mark's analysis right before. We didn't even have time to digest it.
We had that, and then you had your Skype meltdown. So we had two things there.
Yeah. And so it is sort of interesting trying to really look at it. You know, we want to be skeptical. We always want to sort of be in that position of being skeptical. We want to be savvy when we are looking at potential UFO stuff. So
I'd be very, very fearful of arguing with some of these very technically astute people who've got it all figured out. On the other hand, all that I can do, honestly, when it comes to these types of things, is just listen as carefully to all sides.
Right.
And then, you know, each of us has to make our own best decision on it.
Right.
Hopefully we don't make that decision based on what we want to be true.
Right.
We make our decision based on what it actually genuinely looks like. But I have to be honest, like, I don't see a bird in this thing. No. I don't see the bird. Like, Mark sees a bird. Some of the other skeptics see a bird. Maybe with a little more video comparison side by side, if someone can get a good, you know, video of a hawk in dive bomb mode.
Right. So that is in pure glide mode the entire way. There's no wings flapping. It's an entire glide mode. Right.
That's a really interesting point.
The question is, how far away is that object?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because I couldn't see any flapping. There's no flapping.
Now, something that you can see at the end of the video is a bit of a change, which I don't know if from sort of a solid looking whitish object to some darker areas. And you can see that right towards the end. And I don't know if that could be just what might happen when an object is going that fast. It just could be sort of a visual expression, or, you know, according to Mark, that's a bird with wings. You know, that's what it is.
Part of the problem is that there's there's digital compression of the image.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, what you're not getting is an absolutely perfect
raw
representation.
Total raw. Yeah.
I mean, what I learned a long time ago, because I realized, boy, you can get fooled by certain digital images, that the cameras will have their own software and they will do their own interpretation of certain things. That doesn't make it untrue, but it can be deceptive. So all of these factors come into play. I just feel like my reaction is not to get completely over the top yet, but to keep it open.
Right, and not to get totally invested in what you think it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And I will admit, I definitely thought it was one of the two. You know, this is either military for sure, and this is just being hidden from us. You know, this is a flying object. The speed and the banking and everything else.
Well, I don't think we want to rule it out.
No.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I felt, you know, I wasn't going in absolutes, but I thought we're definitely talking about that. Whereas now there's sort of more to look at. And I just want to thank, because I know Rob Woodis is here, and Rob did the video with the parallax. Like, he really broke it down.
Oh, did he?
He did. And so good job on that. And
for the record, I watched that and I thought, wow, that looks really, really good. And now I'm finding out that people want to critique that. So we should get him. Maybe he can come up and he can talk with us about it.
Yeah, and explain it to us a little bit more.
Absolutely up for that. He has the right to defend himself against people trying to debunk his work on that. And the other thing that I would just point out is, a couple of weeks ago, I listened to an interview with Dr. Jack Sarfati, physicist, who I've never met him face to face, but we've had our little encounters over the years, indirectly. I'll just say that.
He's being very diplomatic.
I consider him very brilliant, like a very brilliant man. Well, he didn't like something that I wrote like many years ago, purely politically. Anyway,
he didn't like Richard.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine. Who cares, right? So he gave a very, very excellent interview about the metamaterial that people like Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis are studying over at Earth Tech.
Right.
That's Hal Puthoff's company, under, I guess, officially under the auspices of To the Stars Academy, but really this seems like Hal Puthoff's private little thing here. Anyway, he has talked last summer in 2018, he talked about his assessment of this metamaterial. This is from a alleged fragment of a UFO. And what he said at that time was, this is a highly interesting, unusual, engineered piece of material that I think, as he put it, served as an excellent waveguide for high frequency electromagnetic radiation in the terahertz range. I had to look all of this up. But essentially what I think he was implying was that this took electromagnetic radiation and converted it somehow into an anti-gravity effect. And that's precisely what Sarfati was discussing in this interview. It's on YouTube. You can go search it out. But what Sarfati did that I thought was quite remarkable was he gave a very cogent, coherent, scientific explanation, at least for a layperson, of how the material of this object could, with very little energy, as he put it, soften the space-time barrier around the craft, which I think is his and probably Puthoff's and probably Eric Davis's explanation for how you can achieve ultra-fast speeds without actually requiring necessarily a lot of energy. Sarfati said, hey, maybe a AAA battery will do the job. I don't really know if that's true, but his point was,
it's possible.
You didn't necessarily need a lot of energy for this. And it would also explain the lack of sound for a lot of these objects. And he was talking specifically about the Tic Tac UFO of 2004 that Fravor encountered. But look, could it not be the case for this object as well, this Utah object?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think it's totally possible. So, you know, they say haters gonna hate, debunkers gonna debunk, and it's okay to debunk. But I would just say, I think it's still definitely time to keep our options open. Even over at Metabunk, they, as of today, there were certainly people saying, look, this has not been definitively proven to be CGI. All that you get is like a couple of people suspect it is, but what does that mean?
By the way, this is one of the reasons why we contacted Mark D'Antonio, was to get his opinion on whether there was any possibility that this could be CGI. And
he didn't say that, though.
He didn't say that, no. But he was saying, you know, it's definitely Falcon. So that sounds like he doesn't think it's CGI. Whatever it is,
he just thinks it's a natural event
occurring
that was
on the footage.
Misinterpreted. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So,
well, hopefully time will tell. You know, a lot of these UFO cases, time doesn't always tell. That's the frustrating thing. Yeah. You get into this hang up mode where it's a hung jury, and that could be for 10 years or 50 years, frankly. And I don't want that to be the case with this one. I think this isn't potentially a unique case where there's apparently a lot of good data to work with. There's raw metadata.
Yeah, right. So, it's not fuzzy. It's not a couple of frames. Yeah, there is a lot there.
Right.
I mean, it's the best footage that's ever come forward. But again,
yeah, and actually,
go through due process.
I thought that the parallax argument was actually really good. I thought it proved, just as it was Mark who, what's it? Woodis. Thank you. I'm so sorry that I didn't remember your name. Because we watched that video. I watched it too. And I thought it was it seemed to me a good analysis as to how that could not be an insect.
Rob Woodis. Sorry,
Woodis.
Rob.
My bad. But again, when you have these other people saying, no, he did it wrong, like, then I don't want to get involved. So I just want to like let this whole thing play out and let the people with the math skills and the Google Earth skills figure this stuff out.
That's right. And they can all teach us a lot about parallax
that
we didn't previously know.
Exactly.
Between them. So
I don't know what else I want to really say about this. What do you think?
Well, I just think it's compelling footage, and let's see what happens, and then maybe we'll return to this when we have some more information.
Yeah. You were looking at some other drone information, by the way, and you were getting into it.
I was.
You were getting into it. You want to pull out your notes?
So one of my little secret passions is I love to follow what's going on in AI. And so I was just showing Richard this morning. There was
because we are waiting for robots to become our masters. That's the whole thing. We're just waiting.
I just want to know what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
And I like to see what's happening. And, you know, there is so much happening every single day. And I think one of the things that I noticed right away, we did not watch the Super Bowl, but we heard that the commercials were absolutely dominated by artificial intelligence.
Right. So we watched a couple of them today.
We watched 6 of them today.
Ugh, and commercials.
Yeah. Yeah. But Super Bowl commercials are always really interesting. I mean, it really sort of tells you where society is right now, what sort of the biggest trends are.
So much work goes into those things.
Well, I mean, work and money, right?
They're designed to be more entertaining than anything than the Super Bowl. That's free.
Well, and you know, you just look at those commercials and you can see the acceptance level and the emotional appeal going into these commercials. I mean, they are really guiding people's popular thinking in a certain direction.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's fascinating if you haven't seen it. I'm sure a lot of you have.
Lots of shout outs to Alexa. That was big time on the Super Bowl commercials.
Yeah, that's right. And they had a little child for a tax. What was it? A tax company. They did a little child robot.
Oh, right.
Right. So they're having sort of childlike emotions, and you're engaging. I mean, it's interesting to observe ourselves as we just watch these and how we engage them.
Every one of those commercials was like, it's okay, people. You can learn to love your robot masters. It's all good. Go back to your little Super Bowl world, and we've got it all taken care of. They really, all of them had that kind of a vibe.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of them was about making your home safe. And that's the thing I've always said, like, it's the way it's set up, it's going to make us want it, you know, because it can make our world safer. It can monitor your house. It can.
All about safety.
It's all about safety.
And this is how they're going to hit 5G. They're going to move 5G in
safety
to keep you safe.
Right. Safety
Absolutely.
and health.
Yeah.
So,
despite the fact that it's probably going to give us some form of new kind of tumor, who the hell knows with the 5G, that does not seem like it's healthy type of technology, but I digress.
Yeah. So basically what we were originally talking about was this new pocket-sized drone that the U.S. Army is spending $39 million on. They just placed an order and they're expected to begin delivery early this year. These little drones are 6.6 inches, these little tiny things. They are mini helicopters, essentially. They're so light, soldiers can wear them on their belts.
Right.
And they kind of look like a little dragonfly. You know, they're super light. I think they're
like mini helicopters.
33 grams, something like that. Yeah, they look like little mini helicopters. Mm-hmm. And so I found it super interesting. They're called Black Hornet Personal Reconnaissance Systems, or nano UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. So they're fascinating. They have they're built for surveillance.
Right. So if you've got a group of soldiers going into a hostile area, you send this drone on ahead, and it can go at a speed of like a fast person running, like 1 mile in about 4.5 minutes. It was
20 feet per second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quick.
Yeah.
Like an in-shape high school student could do, and running way out ahead of the rest, but way up there with excellent camera, of course, with all kinds of Black Mirror technology.
I was going to say that. Hi, Black Mirror. If you guys haven't seen that show, it's pretty creepy how all of these things are getting rolled out. So it's like a precognitive dream, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, they're fascinating. They last up for about 30 minutes, and they're almost silent. And
Just like no defense against
They
this,
work
like,
day or night. So obviously there are heat signatures. So you just,
right, they have a FLIR, forward-looking infrared, isn't that the one?
yeah, that's right. And, you just think about that, where that's going to go when it gets in the hands of a wider audience.
Police.
I can't help but my mind always goes to Elysium. If you haven't seen that movie, I know I always talk about it, but it's kind of a dark look at where things might go, which includes a breakaway civilization,
Right.
where all of the technology is being siphoned off of the planet, and the people who are left there have this remaining technology. But there's nowhere anyone can hide. There's all this sort of surveillance everywhere. And when we know there are these little tiny drones that can just be deployed anywhere and read heat signatures, I don't know. It's kind of a creepy thing.
But
we
can be safe in our open air prisons in the future. So rest assured, your neighbor, who will be equally as miserable as we all are, will also be unable to attack and kill you without surveillance drones knowing and punishing. So everyone will be surveilled, and there you go. That's our future. There won't be any jobs, there won't be any hope, but there'll be total surveillance to keep you safe. And don't worry, you'll have a basic guaranteed income. And they're rolling out a new version of Soylent Green next year. So watch out for that. Soylent Green, the movie with Charlton Heston.
Oh, and
it's people. Soylent Green is people. We're going to have to work up on our sci-fi history here.
I don't know that.
So
clearly I need to. Okay.
We went over this before, but okay.
I don't remember that title, but
it's a Canadian thing. I don't think they have that movie in Canada.
I don't know.
They probably banned it. It was a little, right? It's a little
I can't
upsetting.
comment. I don't know it.
It's a little upsetting.
I don't know it. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on. And just, when I read all about all these things, I look at all the things that we will want and we won't be able to resist. It will be very, very difficult. There's this new thing, this new add-on to Chrome that will scan all your passwords. I know we're all thinking bad idea. It scans all your passwords to see if any of them have been found to be in any of the large-scale security breaches. So I don't know if I explained that clearly, but we all know there have been huge breaches, huge data banks that have been hacked into. So it scans to see if you're still using any of those passwords that have been compromised. I mean, that's just an example to me of something that
could be a very nice feature. You would want to know
that's
that
right.
if your password were at risk. For
that's
sure.
right. I'm sure we all hate changing our passwords because we have so many, but this scans through them for you. And
of course,
the
other side is they've got your
they've
passwords.
got all your information. I mean, part of me always thinks as if
that?
They don't have it already, but we don't want to be giving away more things.
Yeah.
So this it's getting crazy just watching the global acceptance of AI when we don't really have measures in place guiding any rules guiding what's happening.
How about we do an AI?
Yeah, I think it's about time we do another one
because we're both very interested in it, and I think we could probably have a very good hour on that one.
I just want to tell one more story that I read. Okay, so this came out of Columbia University, and they built this robotic arm. Mm-hmm. Now they had another experiment that we knew about earlier where they made this little thing that was just legs and it looked like a little starfish, and they decided they weren't going to program it. They were just going to let it learn by itself. So they didn't program anything on it. And what they found was it began doing facial recognition. A part of it began doing facial.
Had a camera.
Yes, it had a camera on and was following one of the people in the room studying it. And so this was really creepy because it was never programmed to do that. So this new article of something that came out at Columbia was similar in that it was a big robotic arm. And again, they hadn't programmed it to do anything. And they just wanted to go through this process of experimentation to just see what it does. And this thing was writing on paper. And I think they gave a list of some other things it was doing.
Was it writing coherent?
I don't know. I don't know what specifically it was doing. But the thing is, I imagine they have cameras, they're scanning the room, and it's teaching itself without any learning, without any formal learning. So,
well, keep in mind,
these are the small experiments.
No, that's amazing. So remember Boston Dynamics. They were the good people who brought you the Terminator-looking robot that could jump and leap and kind of very slowly come after you. And then they also built these like what they look like killer dogs, the type that were in Black Mirror.
Black Mirror.
So, or these
the last episode,
four-legged creatures that could, these are robots, they're not creatures, that could run at 30 plus miles per hour, so fast. So anyway, Boston Dynamics was purchased by Google, probably one of the world's leaders, if not the leader in artificial intelligence. So you think Black Mirror is that far off? I mean, you've got these killer bots that really literally could have an artificial intelligence that, they beat the world's best Go players, and they could, who knows, but all by learning, not by being programmed.
Right.
So,
that one really bothered us for a long time, that episode of Black Mirror.
Yeah.
Okay, so we found a little workaround. Michael is sending me questions on my phone. So,
let's scroll down. So this is from Tarka Jedi. Hey, can we scroll this back down, please? Our My Labs computers. I don't understand this at all. Not photoshopped is what he's saying. He says extraordinary. I calculate 7,000 miles per hour at a minimum. Have you seen better footage? Is this going to blow up? Is that disclosure poster in the back corner of your wall?
That's a different thing.
Okay. That is a little disclosure thing we put up there. Isn't that nice? We're working on it. We have a very nice friend who is a quality manufacturer of all kinds of things. He likes what we do. He actually made a lot of these things for us.
He did. And so this is what we had on the mugs for a while. And some people were asking us about those. We actually pulled those down, and we're getting some different ones made. But do you want to read them what it says? Because you wrote that.
Oh, the disclosure just says, noun. This is from the dictionary, the first part. The action of making new or secret information known. And then I just wrote the second one, the official acknowledgement that UFOs are real. I thought, hell, let's turn this into a dictionary word. And so I wrote that out and gave it to our friend here, who put it together as a dictionary definition. Hey, why not?
So I think he is going to, this was a sample, and so we'll see. It might be something that we try to make available if people are interested. So
we'll keep you posted. It's clear. So you peel it off, and you can move it.
Yeah, you can re-stick it all you want. So we had it all over the place.
It's kind of neat.
It is kind of cool. I really like it. Okay, so
we should wrap up soon, or what do you think?
Yeah.
More questions? Also from Tarka Jedi, the craft has U.S. military design features. Number one, do you think it had a pilot? Number two, if this is U.S. tech, is this proof of your hypothesis about a secret space program? Let me read the next one here. Is Richard familiar with Michael Schratt and his work in aerospace history research? Oh, yeah. So I know Michael and would like to know what he thinks about this object, actually. We'll get into that, but let me just answer this other one here.
Yeah.
I don't know what this object is or isn't, if it has a pilot or not. I wouldn't think it would have a pilot if it's moving as fast as it might appear. If it's moving at 1,000 miles per hour or more. And the other thing is, keep in mind at that very low altitude, what is it, 50 feet above the ground, 100 feet above the ground at the most?
Drone operator said 50 feet above the ground, roughly.
So you're at full atmospheric pressure. You've got it's very difficult to fly at very fast speeds that low, because you've got so much resistance from the atmosphere. You would hear tremendous noise, I would think. And none of that was evident in this. So I would think if that is an artificial object, it is absolutely got to be using some form of field propulsion, anti-grav, that type of technology. It's not conventional. It can't be conventional. but I don't know if there's a pilot in there or not. I have no idea. How large could it be? If it's a bird, well, that's one thing. If it's not a bird, maybe it's the size of an automobile. No one really knows how big this thing is right now. Any other good question? There was a remote viewing question for you.
Yeah, Tracy, have you looked into remote viewing? Is being scanned by MRI machines, etc.? Okay, I'm not exactly sure. I assume you mean if they have been doing any studies where remote viewers are being scanned during the remote view.
Oh, by an MRI machine.
That would be super cool.
You've had some studies done of yourself, though, when you've done remote viewing.
I have, but it wasn't during a remote view specifically.
It was an outbounder, wasn't it?
No, it was done during a binaural sort of type of experiment. It's something that's done at the Monroe Institute, where people will go into a private sort of deprivation area, and all of your biometrics are recorded to see what's happening while they are really cranking up the binaurals. So if someone's having an experience like an out of body or, something along these lines, when they've been doing this on thousands of people, they see certain patterns and they can tell, when someone is fully engaged in some other experience. There's a whole other realm of discussion. However, they did hook me up. I did go through this. I did have this very interesting experience. And I was called aside at the end of it saying, out of thousands, myself and one other person, they'd ever seen scans like this. And I can go into that, talk about that some other time. But
we will.
These were not MRI. That would be amazing. I don't know if they're doing that yet. That would be super cool because what I saw with what I went through is there is something going on when you're going into that state for some people. They can see there's a collective difference that happens with a lot of people. I guess, they've got all these little needles. And for some, when they go into an out of body or something similar, they engage some other reality. All of the needles go up in one area and engage in this higher zone of it. I'm probably butchering this. I apologize if anyone understands this, but maybe I should just.
Well, we'll
talk about this another time.
Detail.
But it is not MRI. Simple biofeedback.
What they said about you, if I can just say this, because I know you're not going to say it, is that you, if I remember this correctly, you have a unique ability of being able to kind of be in two states of consciousness at once. So a conscious state where you're able to talk to the controller of the experience while also being somewhere else. By being,
while being engaged in something. So,
and that's unusual.
So it would look like I was having an out of body experience. However, I would be able to fully be reporting it. And this wasn't just anybody looking and examining this. This was someone who had seen thousands.
This was
Skip Atwater.
Skip Atwater. Yeah, and observed you on this.
Yeah, and there were some other unique indicators on there that they'd only ever seen with one other person.
Yeah.
So, but again, we can talk about that some other time.
I knew you were not going to go into all those details.
I wasn't going to. No.
We should probably wrap this up.
Let's wrap it up.
We're trying to keep this to an hour, guys. So
yeah,
we started a few minutes late because of our little Skype mishap, but here we go. It's all good now.
And again, the last minute information from Mark D'Antonio, kind of whoa. So yeah, we can all go back and we can review the footage, check things out, follow this. Let's follow this and see where it goes. But that is, I'm still going to say, compelling footage. So
well, I would just add to anyone who is excited about this, and it's good reason to be excited about it, but always keep in mind, no matter how great a UFO sighting is, guarantee you there will always be people who will put it in the crosshairs to try to take it down. Mm-hmm. It's how it always is. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that can be legit, and sometimes it isn't. There are genuine, great UFO sightings that, at least in my view, skeptics or debunkers have not been able honestly to explain away. But that's my opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own. But it is true, like the best UFO sightings, all of them come under attack in one way or another. Mm-hmm. It's almost to be expected.
All right.
Well, there we go. So I want to thank everyone for coming out. If you like what we do, hey, here's what you can do. go to our webpage, Richard Dolan Members or Richard Dolan Press. We've got a newsletter, and it's free. It gives you everything that we do every week.
Yeah. It's
That's
like
one
you
thing.
treat it like a little digest. It's big, it's long. We put everything in there that we release every week. Publicly, and for members, it's got the events that are confirmed in there. We've got links to pretty much everything. It's sort of a one-stop shop, and all of the Blue Book videos that Richard is featured in on the History Channel, I always link them at the top of the newsletter. So even if you just want to go check that out, they're only 2 minutes long. It's all in there. And
remember the days of email when you used to get email? That's how you get it. You get the newsletter by your email. Old school. We kick it up old school.
We do, but it links to everything. So it's kind of convenient in a way.
If
right?
you also, absolutely. And by the way, you do the newsletter and it's always amazing. I just love how it looks. If you like what you see here, subscribe to this channel. Helps us out. And like the video. If you like it, just hit like.
I'm sorry we couldn't see who was here tonight. I mean, I glance over every once in a while,
Yes.
and I can see all our regulars are here. Thank you so much for joining us and your support. We love having you here. I can only imagine what was going on in the chat with everybody. We want to thank Pursuing X, and we hope you all have a great night.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you soon.
This was fun. We did this together.
Yeah.
You didn't go over there for a change. Like,
that's
we
right.
did this whole thing.
I'm just going to say, stay tuned for a live show with David Marler coming up soon.
Oh, we've got David. Yes.
And
Mr.
Russell
Targ.
So
Russell
we are
Targ.
very much looking forward to that.
Frank Ficino.
That's right.
The Flatwoods Monster case. So all of them will be interviews on the Richard Dolan Show in the very near future.
Yes.
Yeah, those are all going to be very, very excellent. And more. So.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night. It was great seeing you.
Have a great night. Later.
Bye.